Intersections of identity, race, gender, disability, and resistance.
Welcome to this conversation on intersections of identity, race, gender, disability, and resistance. I'm Lovette Jallow. I'll be moderating today's panel. I'm joined by Rasheera Dopson and Eman Rimawi-Doster. Did I get that right?
You sure did.
Aha. And I'm very glad to be in conversation with both of them. And this panel is going to sit in a wider conference theme of remembrance, honor, remembering who we are as we press forward. And that matters because Black disabled lives are so often spoken about through crisis, deficit, or institutional language. So today we are going to make room for something a little bit fuller, the realities of being misread, the forms of resistance Black disabled people can build and have built through time, the knowledge that gets erased, the futures that become more possible when Black disabled people are centered on our own terms. So I am going to move and let every person introduce themselves as they wish, and then I will introduce myself. Iman, do you want to go first?
Absolutely. So thank you all for so much for having me this morning. I might be a little discombobulated because my coffee has not fully integrated into my body. Just a little bit about myself. I am a Black and Palestinian woman living in New York City, born and raised in New York, live in East Harlem, grew up in Jamaica, Queens. And so if I say things that are incredibly av heavy, that's just because that's my fluent language through and through and through. I've been an organizer and an advocate in Black and Brown disabled spaces and women's spaces for coming up on 27 years. And sometimes I'm like, wait, what? I've been doing that long? Hell yeah, I have. That's because I started early in high school. And when I saw injustices, I immediately was like, okay, I need to do something about it. And I never stopped. And so everything that I do is focused around working on systemic oppressions, but finding solutions to help people to get through it. Oftentimes, people don't believe that my lupus is as bad as it is, that my brain fogs are as bad as they are, just because I can hold a conversation, that my pain isn't so bad because I'm out and about all the time. Like, you just have to deal with it. And now that I've been a double amputee for 13 years, people really talk to me in very strange, weird ways while I'm doing all the things that I'm doing. And so it's like both of those weird spaces exist at the same time, both the dehumanization and the inspiration porn and the weirdness. So I'm this is gonna be a great conversation. I'm very happy to be here and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Rashira.
Hi everyone. Like she said, my name is Rasheera Dopson. My academic titles, I have a master's in public health from Morehouse School of Medicine, where I do a lot of community-based research in Black and Brown communities. But I also identify as a disabled woman. I have apparent and non-apparent disabilities. And so a lot of my scholarship involves around using my lived experience to inform my research, which is about Black women with disabilities and looking at health outcomes and the intersectionality of racialized and gendered aspects of disability. Aside from my academic scholarship, I'm definitely a to heart advocate, activist, have done a lot of community work in disability justice spaces, and bringing that level, like I said, using my own personal research and scholarship to inform, I believe, larger narratives around healthcare access, education, and bringing awareness. I also do some podcasting. I have my own podcast called Womanhood and Disability, where we talk about the intersections of womanhood and disability. Especially from perspective of being a Black woman with a disability. I think that's really, really important. And so, yeah, I've learned to use a lot of different multimedia mediums to be able to, I believe, do a level of storytelling, and to amplify voices that are typically overlooked or not seen. They're at the margins, different things like that. And on a day to day, I'm kind of like Amon. I'm just like a girl. I was raised in California, born in the South, hopped around a little bit, traveled the world, but also wearing that strong hat of activism wherever I go and disrupting spaces intentionally, sometimes and unintentionally sometimes. So it's great to be here among similar company.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. And my name is Lovette Jallow. I am an author of multiple books that also raise the question of disability and being a stranger in spaces, even amongst Black people sometimes. So I'm an author. I also am a lecturer. So I lecture at Swedish universities. And outside of that, I'm also an inclusion strategist when it comes to workplaces, what grants, what adaptations should be done to make it more neurodiverse, inclusive of neurotypical people as well as other neurotypes as well. And I also do research. So I am one of the only humans that actually looks at and researches disability and neurodivergence in pre-colonial indigenous African cultures in multiple languages, simply because I speak multiple languages. I'm not so much for maths, I'm more for languages, so I speak 7 of them. But alongside that work, I also run an NGO that helps assist Black disabled women in legal cases when it comes to racism and also their rights here in Europe, in Sweden. So most of my work for the last 15 years has basically been structured around race, structural design, and Black neurodivergent life, including children as well. So I always say I'm just continuing what my grandmother did in Gambia, because she was also a community strategist working for women's rights in the Gambia against FGM and also making family planning available to women that need it. So a lot of my work continues from that, and it sits and asks what is possible, what becomes more possible when we stop looking at difference only through Western pathology and start also incorporating the cultures that existed far beyond that, how they use memory, culture, and survival and community support. So that is most of my work, and currently a lot of research and a lot of writing, but that's the beginning and end of it. I hate the tell me about yourself question. So I'm going to kick it off now, because when you ask someone, tell me about you, all I can think of, I like pancakes. I like blueberry pancakes. I'm like, what are we ascertaining? It's so vague. I'd rather people just speak and tell me about themselves naturally when they feel like they trust me or want to share that with me. So we're going to start with a main question. When you think about the intersection of race, gender, disability, and culture as well, what do you feel is still being fundamentally misunderstood? So I'm going to start with Rasheera, and then we're going to go to Eman, and then I'll answer. What do we think is still fundamentally misunderstood?
Yeah, I think this is this is my jam, so I'm going to try to put a gallon in a pint. I think, and I was literally writing about this. I'm in the process of my exam, so I was writing about this yesterday, that often the assumption, especially among Black disabled women, is that Black women, we're a monolith. Right. And I feel like it flattens our experiences so much. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, Jallow, in your introduction, that we have this assumption that all classes of Black people are the same. And I take the term monolithic because often we say this in disability justice, like disability is not a monolith. But actually, we need to apply this monolith concept, of course, all dispersions of race, class, and gender, because class can look differently among a Black American or someone who is Caribbean Black American or Afro or different things like that. And so I think we really, if we're going to say we are leading with intersectionality, ethnic and racial minority groups, gender minorities are also not omitted from applying intersectional lens. And I think that is something that's often overlooked because it's like, well, if you meet one Black person, again, you meet all Black people. If you meet one disabled person, you meet all disabled people. If you meet all Black disabled people, we are the same. And that is completely different and false. based on the fact that one, disability is such a huge umbrella term that all of us, even with someone in the same conditioned family as you, their symptoms will be differently, the way it manifests is differently, the way their body reacts to their disability or chronic illness is differently. And so I really try to be intentional on really going more granular and looking at what those differences are and who is really at the margin, who is really being overlooked, and who really needs to be amplified in whatever space that is looking to have closer proximity to power.
Oof, you took the words right out of my mouth. So, you already mentioned how people tend to flatten and oversimplify for their own understanding, which is not our lack, really. Because my grandmother raised me as a kid, and I always tell this to my kids. They're all also either autistic, we have disabilities, and I have no kids, but somehow people give me their kids as God kids. My grandma said, if I can't see you, all of you, your expansiveness, is it up to you to cut yourself to smaller pieces for me to digest? Or should I go to Specsavers and enlighten myself until I can take all of you in?
Disabled folks are not one-dimensional. And I think that's under society and white supremacy, that's the only way we can exist. We're not even like, afterthoughts. We're not thoughts at all. We're not even characters or side characters. We're less than an extra. And so when they don't want to see us, just like when people are like, oh, I don't see race, I don't see color, I don't see disability. Well, then you don't see the discrimination we're going through. Then you don't see the things that we have to deal with on a regular basis. I've had so many people come, like when I've had conversation with folks, especially people who have no interactions with Black and brown folks aside from me, have no interactions with anyone with disability except for me, not believing my experiences because they haven't experienced it, because they haven't seen me go through it, so they don't think it's real. But it is real. And just because I was thinking this morning, I'm like, I've never been to Ireland. That doesn't make it not real, right? So that means that just because I've not been someplace or seen something, that does not take away from the experiences that people have gone through. And I think society as a whole, really and truly, when talking about the intersection, when talking about us not being monoliths, see disabled folks as the individuals that we are, respect us at where we are, take on listen to the experiences that we've gone through, whatever they are, and take them as the individual, not as a whole monolith. I've never met anyone with lupus like mine. And I honestly don't want to, because I've been through some hardcore stuff. I don't want anyone to go through that. And also, that doesn't take away from my experiences. And that's all under the umbrella of white supremacy, basically trying to erase anyone who does not fit into the teeny tiny box that it creates. So that was my rant.
One of the second main questions I want to ask is institutions. What are they gaining? How are they misreading us? And what are some of the consequences you both see in your work of those misreadings? It can be healthcare, education, workplaces, media, even our own activist spaces, community spaces. Please, Eman, take it.
I think that's a great question. And oftentimes I fluctuate between being in smaller nonprofit spaces or spaces with many more lawyers or with elected officials or with people who deal with policy or with just, straight up community members. And most oftentimes I am one of the most diverse people in the room, which is a problem because oftentimes I'm used as a token, being like, well, we got you. You check all the boxes. And I'm like, I don't check all the boxes, but okay. And that happens so often, not just in spaces that I'm in, but other spaces that other folks who aren't white, who aren't non-disabled, who aren't women are in. And it's just like, why is this the way it is? And I think it's because there are a lot of people who'd rather get the credit for being an ally rather than doing the actual work of being an ally. And I think that some people don't even know the actual definition. And I've had this talk so many different times with so many white folks, and they get in their feelings about it. And I'm like, I'm not trying to scold you. If I didn't care about you in this space, I wouldn't say anything to you. But because I care about you in this space, because I see, oh snap, maybe you can be a decent ally, you need to get a little educated. And how I'm gonna educate you is letting you know that what you're doing right now is performative. This is not allyship. You just want the credit and the pat on the head and all the accolades while not doing anything. And honestly, I think some people don't recognize that allyship is a verb. It's an action verb. You literally need to put your body between me and harm so that I know that you're going to use your privilege to save me. And that's me in the grand scale of me, whoever is the me, whoever is the marginalized person. And I think oftentimes they don't even understand that. They think, oh, I'm just going to bust out my phone and record what's going on, but say nothing and do nothing before, during, and after. That's not allyship. That is performative. And so I think that comes from the higher ups with institutional, and unfortunately, because the West is so, I hate to use the word dominant, maybe aggressive, maybe colonizing. I don't know. The West has some problems, and it's very individualistic as opposed to being very much more about the community where, the community ties and the community connections came from mostly Black communities and African communities. And then it was completely dismantled and taken away. And now we're in this individualistic type of way of, I got to get mine. I got to do me. Well, no, wait a minute. What happened to the we? What happened to the us? What happened to the community? What happened to looking out for our neighbors? And unfortunately, again, white supremacy is at the heart of that. And it's wild how it keeps coming back to that. But the higher ups in institutions don't even want to look at themselves in the, and I think it's because they have, I think a lot of the issues are actually trauma responses. They have their own issues, and instead of them working on it, they bleed their trauma all over us, just like we see with the orange ass hat. He's got all kinds of trauma responses. He's bleeding his trauma all over the world, and now we got to deal with the consequences. And that's not to take away from the harm that they're doing, saying, oh, maybe they need therapy. No, that's just saying this is what this is. And maybe if they got some therapy early on, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. And so I feel like white supremacy is full of a lot of hurt children who want to bleed their trauma all over everyone in the forms of racism and sexism and ableism and classism. And they're never going to deal with it because they don't even want to look in the mirror to deal with the person that they are. And so I know that's going a little too deep in meta, but also it's very real, and it's very much what's going on. And unless we deal with this in that kind of deep cellular way, I don't see it changing, which is kind of unfortunate.
I will say, Aman, when we actually started getting initial exposure to everything that was happening with immigration and ICE, I had gotten so sick and tired of seeing all of my TikTok feed of people standing and recording while people are getting snatched off their jobs. And it should have dawned on me earlier, but we were such inundated with information. But I was like, if I was a mother and I was in the store and someone came in and snatched my child, would I take out my phone to record, or would I literally put my body as a physical barrier between my child, and whoever was trying to inflict harm? And I was like, bingo, there it is. I was like, there's such a level of privilege that we think phone recording someone while they are physically being assaulted is enough, and how we have watered down what allyship means, what advocacy means, in the guise of our privilege because it's comfortable. And I was like, I like to think my grandmother was a civil rights activist in the 1960s, and she went on in the state of South Carolina to become a state legislator and all these things. And so I feel like I get a lot of my advocacy and civil rights lens from her lived experience. And I remember she was saying that, the who she grew up with in the civil rights movement, everyone just had a mindset of this identity of we are all self-sacrifice. Like we use that wrongly now, like, oh, it's self-sacrifice. We use that in such a negative way. But there is, I believe, a flip side of self-sacrificing for the benefit of humanity. And I feel like we have lost that a little bit, that our grandparents, our ancestors who came before us, they were so self-sacrificing because they believed in the greater cause of liberation for our people. I don't know if we have that now. I'm gonna be honest, we don't have that now. We are quite selfish. And one of the things that you both really pointed out was the institutionalization of that selfishness. And we can't even begin to kind of conceptualize how deeply entrenched, because like you said, it's very much individualistic. Me. How's it going to benefit me? How's it going to benefit my career? And I remember the first time this kind of, again, another example of which this institutionalization of allyship, and it was kind of a slap in the face when executive orders started going out about how they're going to cut all the funding, all health care, most of the healthcare programs, all the DEI initiatives. And I remember sitting in a room with my peers and with faculty and with professors, and everybody was so concerned that their multi-million-dollar grant was being cut and they were no longer able to do the work or get their grant approved, more than being concerned about the actual lives and bodies behind the research they were claiming to do. And I had to stop. I know you can't do your research NIH grants on indigenous communities anymore. I'm so sorry. You lose $1 million. But what about the indigenous people who are literally being erased from history? I'm sorry that you, as a white professor, can no longer use woman, underrepresented, advocacy, queer in your grant application. But you still have a job, and all of your students now are at the very target of these DEI policies. What about them? And of course, nothing was said in the room because to them, well, that's not the point because we need funding to continue to do the work. And so I think about how institutionalization, we have become so far removed from the heart and the work that we actually do in the bodies and the people that we actually are committed to do this. And I think we see that especially in academia, we see that especially in healthcare, we see that especially in which Black people, disabled people, we are now being the sacrificial lamb because no one wants to take ownership about the harm of the institution, which is why I believe so many in our generation, we are now kind of in a place of recalibrating, going back to our community values, going back to that interdependence, because obviously individualism and independence has gotten us where we are right now. And I'm hoping, I don't know if I don't want to say much hope in humanity or to be that negative, but it is such a long, it's going to be a long arc, right? A long arc of getting to that place to get really the people to wake up and to understand, like you said it perfectly, Eman, we can't use the tools of the oppressor to advocate for liberation. We have to use a different methodology. And so that is something that I feel like I'm constantly trying to get people to deconstruct and understand. If you want better institutions to house and stop initiating harms on communities of colors, on disabled bodies, we can't go about it in the same way because institutions are literally the birthplace of where that harm has taken place. And we have to disconnect. We have to disconnect and dismantle that and start something new.
I know Solaris also said that the conference is about remembrance and honor. And I think that deeply matters because I honor both of you. Just being in this space with you, hearing about your work, your opinions is enriching my life, my way of thinking, my work that I will do starting as soon as this ends. It's about honor, obviously, and I think that matters. And how how much of Black disabled life has been interrupted, renamed? Let's talk about pathology and pathologized as well, or erased. How much of the DSM has been formulated based on our reactions, our natural reactions? And then they try to erase a lot as well. So my next question is, what histories and ways of knowing or forms of Black disabled brilliance do you feel have been erased or left unnamed? I'll start with Eman.
Oh gosh, so many things. I mean, first with the, talking about, not dismantling the master's house with the master's tools. That's straight from Audre Lorde. And Audre Lorde was an incredible Black woman who was also part of the disabled community. And when I was learning about my organizing skills, oh gosh, like 23 whole years ago, they never mentioned that she was disabled. They just said that she was an advocate, she was an activist, she was a writer, she was a speaker, she was a thinker, a professor, an amazing community person. They never used disabled. And it wasn't until years later that, upon more reading and more research, I was like, oh snap, wait a minute. She was in the club. Why did they never mention that? And I think it is because, honestly, I've had so many interactions with Black folks, especially in New York, who don't want to use the D word. They think using disabled or disability is somehow diminishing the disabled person. And I've had people say to me, oh, man, you're not disabled. And I'm like, all right, let me ask my 5011 medications, my metal legs, my walker, my wheelchair, all my specialists, my chronic pain, my chronic fatigue. Let me ask all that stuff. They're like, no, but you're so independent and you're so strong and you're so this and you're so that. And I'm like, and yeah, and I'm disabled all at the same time, y'all. And both can exist at the same time. And because the world continually wants to dehumanize and belittle and infantilize disabled people, you're even more so infantilized and dehumanized and made less than as a Black disabled woman. And as Beyonce said, from dark brown to fluorescent beige, Bishop Black. And so people can smell Black on me and they go ahead and dehumanize me even further. And then when they find out that I'm also part Palestinian, they're like, oh, you're one of those. Urgh. And I've had people say some wild stuff to me over the years. And it's like, what? First of all, you'd never say that to a white lady or a non-disabled lady. But also, why do you think it's your job to come and try to humble me and dehumanize me simply because you feel crappy about yourself? And I think that's honestly where a lot of that comes from. Some people's self-esteem is so low and so in the ground that they want to make you feel the way they feel. And I think a lot of going back to the white supremacy, I think a lot of them feel inept as people, seeing all the things we've been through for hundreds of years, and we have not been defeated. We have not been chopped down. We are still doing amazing, amazing things in this world as Black people, not even retaliating, matter of fact, which we could do, by the way, but we haven't because we recognize that we are so much more in the world than being retaliatory towards the violence that's been inflicted on us for freaking centuries. And so I think that a lot of people just really need to deal with their own stuff so that they're not, again, bleeding their trauma onto everyone else. And I think that's part of why, when I was learning about all my organizing stuff, that's why I didn't learn about Audre Lorde being a disability rights and disability justice advocate because of their relationship with disability. But it's beyond that. There are so many other activists from over the years that were part of the club, but were never given that power in it. And it was just erased from their whole stratosphere because of the way society sees us. And then you have people like us who are coming off as being real strong and independent and quote, we can manage. But it's like, no, you just don't see all the things I'm going through. You think I'm doing everything perfectly fine, but I'm actually struggling while I'm doing all this stuff. And you just don't see it. And that goes back again. If you don't see race, if you don't see disability, you will not see the discrimination. And just as if they don't see me as disabled, they won't see me struggling. And I struggle so much, but because I make it, people say I make it look so good. I'm like, I don't make anything look good. I'm just doing, I have, what choice do I have? There's literally no choice. Just like you said, Lovette, there's no, you can't sleep, you can't rest. You have to keep going because there's so many people literally dying. And sometimes I'm like, you guys, do we see what the hell's going on in the world? We just learned about some freaking pedophilic cannibals running our freaking world, and we're supposed to just go about things like normal. Children are getting blown up in multiple countries around the world, and we just supposed to act like, oh, let me go to the office and do some tip. What? And so that's the like the complete disconnect from humanity that's going on right now while all these very disabling events are happening. I think that a lot of folks don't even understand that a lot of these things that are going on right now are actively in real time right now disabling people. More amputee children have come out of Gaza than at any time in our freaking history as humans. And it's so, and there's still people who are like, oh, these babies are terrorists. Who the hell are you, dude? What is wrong with you to call a baby a terrorist? Like, really? Wow. Okay. So white supremacy has infiltrated your body so damn much that you're willing to see a child, a baby, who doesn't even have words to speak as a terrorist. Like, who hurt you? Like, really? Like, go touch grass. Like, what are you, and so, and that's all very, again, connected under white supremacy, which I really feel like should be talked about so much more. But I think the higher ups don't want us to even know that it's that deep. But it is very much that deep. And now we're seeing, oh snap, some of the conspiracy theories, quote, conspiracy theories, they're really true. They really happened. And so it's like, wait, we need to all now question everything, all the things, because we've been lied to for so long. And people are still dying while we're being lied to, while we have to be, acting like normal, regular people going about our business. And so it's like all these things happening all at the same time are just, yeah, it's very wild. And the morals of all this stuff is we need to stop ignoring all of our different identities that show up in all the different ways, since we're not all just one-dimensional people. And yeah, that was my little rant. Yeah.
Rasheera now to answer the same question.
Oh, so good. I think for me, one of the areas, well, one I wanted to speak to, I think a lot of the immaterial that we've been talking about, you said it so perfectly. The consequence of that immaterial is the invisible emotional labor that goes behind that. What it means to stand up to support our communities, and how that often goes invisibilized, especially as Black disabled women, because one is the assumption that we'll always be there and we're always holding up. But two, it is also the privilege that even when you think we're down, or even when you think we are strong, we never have space to rest or to say we're drowning, because by the time most of us say that we're drowning, we've already been underwater for quite some time. And I can speak for myself. There have been many moments in my life where I felt overwhelmed. I felt like I told someone the other day, I'm tired of being strong, but I don't even see the light at the end of the tunnel to not be strong, because at the point that I am not strong, my weakness is then weaponized against me. And if that, then that is going to take me out and I will not survive. So for us, strength is a weapon of resistance, unfortunately. And sometimes rest, it exposes us to vulnerabilities that we just can't take that risk. And so when I think about that immaterial and how that shows up in our everyday life, it's in those micro things and it's in the macro things. And then in thinking about communities, our people and heritages and honors that we often don't think about, you said it in the very beginning, Lovette. I was thinking Black brilliance is something that is often not talked about. And I think about this very specifically, not just in my own personal life, but I have a nephew now, and I have nieces and nephews, but this particular nephew, the teacher had sent him home. He was having some issues in class, and my sister and I were talking it through, and I was like, okay, that may be ADHD, that may be boredom, or that just may be typical, 6-year-old behavior, and trying to tease apart. But oftentimes I told her that school systems and the structures of school, they are not taught, nor do they have the skill or the capacity to recognize what brilliance looks like in a Black child. And I know for me, a lot of people now, they're like, oh my gosh, you're so smart, you're in PhD, da 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 da. And I will tell you, that was not my experience growing up. I literally had a professor say to me, white woman professor, she's like, I just assumed that you were, top of your class and honor student. And I was like, I have a disability. I've been disabled. I've born without my disabilities. If nothing, and they did, they stuck me in special education all 12 years of my high school experience. And then I went on to college, and that same system of overlooking, it was the sheer grace of God and determination inside of me, and my mother's voice in my ear saying, you are not what they have labeled you to be. And I had to go in a self-discovery process to name and identify my own brilliance, in which, to be honest, I still don't know how to categorize it, because the way that it comes out is a lot differently than what we are trained as scholars, as health practitioners, to identify and look like. And so when I think about Black brilliance, I think about those TikTok videos that are saying, do you remember those times in school where all the children were being tested or put in the gifted program? And I remember I said to my friend, I was like, the thing about it is that they think it's a badge of honor because they were put through a program that was looking for them. But I was like, what about all the children where the gifted program was not even in their radar? Because if we think about it historically, gifted programs and assessments of brilliance, they weren't even targeting Black and brown children. They didn't even come to our schools. So how many of our children went through the whole educational complex who whose brilliance hadn't yet been activated is now being active? Why do we think we see so many new diagnoses of ADHD, autism, brilliance, entrepreneurship? We see such this boom because there was never a space to cultivate, develop, and even identify brilliance in our community. And I think that is something that needs to be talked about more, because I know Black students who can synthesize worlds around a professor who's been tenured for 35 years. My professor, one of my favorite professors in women and gender studies, she was like, Rasheera, you write from your bones. And I had to sit with that, because what is that? To have something so entrenched, the knowledge so entrenched in your bones that there isn't even a single book to identify it. That is the type of Black brilliance. I believe that's the brilliance that Wakanda talked about, right? Or was trying to reimagine, that there is this stream and this currency of technology within our communities that has been there for centuries that we haven't even begun to tap into, really, not to the fullest of the extent. And so I think we have not done a service to uncovering and unpacking that Black brilliance. And if anything, Black brilliance, that's the biggest threat to our culture. We don't even have to retaliate, because our brilliance will become a force of technology that will recreate and reimagine worlds that we're still writing movies about. That's just my, that is my soapbox.
Oh, we're coming more towards the end. I don't know what the time level is, but this is just so amazing. Which brings me to the final part, I think, resistance. Because once we understand how much has been erased, misnamed, how many of our elders, long gone now, have been misnamed, I think resistance starts to look so much bigger than visibility, which some people opt for. So my question is, what does resistance look like for both of you? Black disabled life beyond survival and beyond visibility. So Rasheera, you take this one away. And I love how we all keep apologizing for me on my soapbox. Sorry, I'm ranting. Meanwhile, me, I'm like, I'm gonna do both, but I ain't gonna apologize for it because it's a black space now.
You know what? And it's so, it doesn't happen often. I will say that. I navigate and occupy predominantly white spaces probably about 99.9% of the time. And so it is a lot of masking, it's a lot of filtering, it's a lot of assimilating for the sake of my livelihood and for my own protection as well. Because I do believe, I don't want to be a sellout, but also in certain conversation, it puts me at risk, physical, emotional risk. And so I'm grateful for all the soapboxes because I soak all these moments up. But for me, I think resistance, I've really been singing with that word within the past few years about my own advocacy journey, my own lens in which I want to offer to disability justice. And I think for me, resistance looks like creating space for the dual and what I also like to call the triality nature of what can coexist at the same time. Two things can be true at once. We often hear that a lot in psychosocial spaces and sometimes very much advocacy spaces, and really honing in that resistance for me is not silencing one part of me in order for the other one to have success, but it's allowing both parts of me or the multiple parts of me, because I say triality because I am Black, I'm female, and I'm disabled. That's three, I'm counting. And so allowing me to exist in that triality world in which I am navigating, in which I don't have to shut off one, I don't have to silence one disability in order to get another disability need, where I don't have to shut off my Blackness in order to advocate for my disability, or vice versa, because we see that a lot where Black people feel like they can't proudly proclaim disability in Black spaces, and in disability spaces we can't probably proclaim Blackness in disabled spaces. And so being out allowed and allowing myself to say unapologetically, I am both, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I think resistance for me looks like doing what I want to do, doing what I love to do, doing what I set out to do, and not apologizing for it. I remember when I first started in my academic career, I was kind of indirectly told that don't focus too much on disability. You're saying disability too much. Broaden your research scope. And then when I went more into the Black spaces or the disabled spaces, but you're focusing too much on Blackness. Make it applicable to all disabled people. And not realizing those words, they cause an internal conflict, because for me, I couldn't shut off one and the other. And I knew that the work that I want to do, the podcast that I have, and talking about those intersections, that I didn't just want to talk about the intersections, but I knew the importance of those intersections. And so I had to then say, Rasheera, you can't be ashamed that if your passion is Black disabled women, own it. Don't apologize for being too Black, for being too disabled, for being too feminist. Like, what are you apologizing for? And for me, that is resistance. It is taking ownership and claiming what I know is to be true and what I believe is attached to my greater life's purpose. And not even understanding that a lot of people don't get there. A lot of people will stop at that level of resistance because then it becomes too uncomfortable. It becomes too siloing. It becomes too radical for them. But resistance for me is actually allowing myself to unapologetically be who I innately am. And again, so other people can come behind me, other women, other scholars, other disabled women can come behind me and take up space, not being scared to take up space, take up all the space, take the whole room, if that's what you want to do. And so for me, I think that is what resistance looks like, is being unapologetic and not saying sorry.
No, I loved everything you just said, because I think that sometimes like, society has conditioned us to just keep going and going and going until our wheels fall all the way off. And as a double amputee who lost both legs and a knee, I don't have any more wheels to lose. And so rest is so very important. There's a book, I'm blanking on the author's name, but it's called The Nap Ministry. And I read that book in like 2 days because I was just like, everything you're saying is so correct. And this Black woman was basically like, listen, your rest is part of resistance. Don't let them break your body into the ground further than it is. And she even went into how like traumas can not only cause disabilities, but chronic illnesses. And I know that that's why my lupus has been so wild over the years, because of the stresses and traumas that I've been going through since I was a little kid that kept going through the rest of my life. And when it finally relaxed, that's when even more health stuff popped up, because your body and your brain was like, oh, now you can relax now. Here's everything. Yay. And so rest is incredibly important. But there's also this other company that I really, really love, Rebel Soul. And they have this t-shirt that says, if I'm too much, go find less. And I think about that constantly, because I've always been told you're too loud, you're too ghetto, you're too this, you're too that. And it's been a lot of white spaces, a lot of spaces that have no experience with Black or brown folks, have no experiences with disability, and I'm just too much for them, and they don't know what to do with me. And so I show up as myself. I used to code switch a lot, but these days I do less of that. I'll be 42 next month, and I'm just kind of like, you know what? I'm at the stage in my life where I don't care. So I will show up how I show up. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, also great. Not my problem. That's a you problem, not a me problem. And so that's part of my resistance as well, showing up as my authentic self. And just like you were saying that like some people want to like compartmentalize us, that we can't be all the things at the same time. Like oftentimes people want me to choose, are you Black or are you Palestinian? I'm both, all at the same time. Like all at the same time. And I can also cuss you out in 3 languages all at the same time. So it's just like, come on now, why do I have to choose? It's so wild to me that they want you to choose so that you can fit in these teeny tiny boxes, and then further dehumanize you, further infantilize you, try to continue to take more and more of your power away. And so I hold on to my power for dear life, but I also just come out swinging with it. And I'm just like, accept me or not, I don't care. I'm gonna still be here. And one of the ways that I show a lot of, I mean, I do it because I'm still a little, 13 years after being an amputee, I'm still a little clumsy with it. And so I have to wear a lot of short skirts and dresses so I can see my legs and my peripheral. But some people really hate on me for how I dress, thinking I'm just trying to be fresh and cute. And I'm like, yeah, I know I'm fresh and cute, but I'm also trying not to make friends with the floor. Hashtag Doja, and they don't recognize that. And so I show off my metal legs, yes, because I don't want to fall, but also as a form of resistance, because people are like, ew. Some people have been like, why are you showing your legs like that? Mostly older white women. And I have to say some older Black women too, who I think don't like the fact that I live out loud and proudly as myself, and they never got to do it. And instead of them upholding me and uplifting me and saying, oh, I'm so happy that you can be your full self, they want to be nasty and mean and talk crap and gossip and all that. And that could be a whole nother episode, because that's all up in the Black community, but also part of the disabled community. And I've experienced that so many times. But I try to show up in so many different kinds of ways of resistance, because I know the world doesn't want me here. I know that it doesn't want me to exist in my fullness of myself. And because of that, I do it even more, even louder, even prouder. And I mean, I even also have a podcast called My So-Called Disabled Life. And I interview folks from around the world talking about all kinds of things. And I have people show up as their authentic disabled selves. Because oftentimes they want us in these little teeny tiny boxes to just be this little thing. Just check a box, and if you can't check a box, then you don't count, you don't matter. And what I'm saying with my podcast is no, we all matter. All of our disabled experiences matter. They're not the same, they're all different, and they're beautifully diverse and complex, and we should celebrate them, but also talk about some of the pains about it as well. And all of that exists at the same time. And so I refuse to let these people make me be one dimensional. I'm a multi-dimensional being. I go beyond space and time, and I will always go beyond space and time, and they don't have to like it. I'm gonna just be me, and that's how I'm gonna show up.
What can we imagine in the future? What material changes can happen when Black disabled people are centered, celebrated, fully resourced? And I don't mean that performative or symbolically either, but real, practical, tangible terms. Maybe we can end it on what we see happening in all our individual works as well. I will mute myself. Oh, y'all could, whoever wants to take the mic, take the mic.
Yeah, I can start. I mean, I would just, say there's an actor, I don't know, I'm spacing on names this morning a lot. She said in one of her award speeches, she's like, people don't have to like you, they don't have to respect you, but when you look in the mirror, you've got to like what you see. And I think that is so vitally important, especially for Black disabled people, because oftentimes we are taught to think of ourselves as less than, as ugly, as inferior, as not good enough. It's simply because of and connected with our Blackness, our disability, like it's hand in hand. And so I would just say, love yourself, love yourself first, because that's how you can get through a lot of these different things. And I, having to reinvent myself over the years, the older I've gotten, the more disabled I've gotten, the more the lupus has really wreaked havoc on my body because of the stresses of life, because of society. And I didn't know at the time years ago that I was sort of almost doing it to myself a little bit, that I didn't have to internalize it, that I didn't have to let it go so deep in me. But we have some more tools now. We have more books you can read, more videos you can do. I love that you mentioned EDMR, because I think that's such a vitally important kind of therapy for people. There's a therapist I follow on Instagram, Shaheem, and he talks about that a lot. I love his videos so much. And sometimes the trauma is so deeply ingrained in us that we don't even realize that we're bleeding our trauma all over everybody and everything. And we don't even think that we need to go through any healing of any kind. So, take a moment to be with yourself, to look yourself in the mirror, to say, hey, I love you. Hey, I'm not going to abuse you. Hey, I'm not going to be mean to you or nasty to you. Years ago, Bruce Lee said that, don't even say joking bad things about yourself, even in the joke, because your body can't tell that you're joking. And so if your body and the universe can't tell that you're joking when you're saying something disparaging about yourself, even as a joke, your body will internalize that as well. And so we need to just learn to really be kind to ourselves, not talk disparagingly about ourselves, to, love what we see in the mirror, love what we're coming with in our Black disabled bodies. And, don't let this white supremacy take you out. Like, that's the one thing that they really and truly want. They want it to take us out. Don't let it take you out. Whatever you need to do, even if you need to go to one of those like smash rooms and smash some computers and furniture and scream and let it do something, but don't let it take you out. I know sometimes it feels incredibly dark. It feels so hard. It feels like, oh my gosh, the world is literally falling apart around us. And in some parts, yes, the world is falling apart around us. And also, you need to stay here. Your energy, you vibrate bright. We all vibrate with an energy, with a light from inside of us. And don't let them diminish your shine. Don't let them take out your light. You shine as bright as you need to in any room. And just like you said, Lovette, you don't have to even be in every room. Not every room is for you. Even if you want to bring a folding chair, you could fold it right back up and walk the hell out. You don't have to stay. You don't have to deal with any of this stuff. So love yourself, be present with yourself, put yourself first so that you can be there for other people, and recognize that you matter. Each and every one of us matters. So that's my advice.
Yeah, I think I love everything that you said because self-love, it has to start internally, right? Before we give out into the community, it has to come from within us. You can't, what do they say? You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give love to a world or society around you where there is no love within you. And I think that's very powerful. I think something that I've also been learning and leaning into, that when it does get dark, when it does get hard, when the racism, the ableism, the sexism, misogynoir, when it all becomes overwhelming and oppressing, I go back to the communities in which I know. And I think there's so much power in healthy community. There's so much power in congregate settings. Just even us having this conversation is a form of healing because it gets all of the thoughts that are often reverberating inside. It gets us to openly express. It gets us to release. It gets us to say something out loud that we often mute, we silence, and different things like that. And so I often have to remind myself that even though I may be siloed in this moment, or I may be experiencing isolation, I am not isolated. I am not loved. I do not lack. I have community. There are people in this earth that do love me. Even if I have to go my whole life searching for them and putting myself in those spaces, I think it's a reminder to intentionally put myself in the mix of the community. I think systems and institutions, again, they train us to be very individualized, very much about self. But when we put ourselves in the midst of other selves, we have such a greater power that's working within us. And this is not to say, universality and all that's going to be better, but I think it is to sometimes you draw your strength from people and things that you know to be true. We have to go back to those, we have to go back to those systems and those sources of strength, and I think those are very much things that have been anchoring for me, especially as when it seems like the world is falling apart, is drawing my source and my strength from things that have already proven themselves. And so, yeah, I think that will be my lasting words.
We are seeing each other, and I'm proud of a lot of Black women who have divested from the stereotype of strong Black women, because it doesn't serve us. It serves white supremacy, because we're either Jezebel, we are a strong Black woman, or angry Black woman. None of those are us. It's what the systems have built, these narrow four boxes of what can you be? For me to use you, hypersexualize you, abuse what you give, everything you have. So I'm seeing a lot of Black women also acting very caring, relaxed. Like, if you make me angry, I'm crying first because I'm going to feel those feelings. I'm not going to even yell. Now you look embarrassed. Now see, how can I out-white you? Because I've been watching you my whole life. I know raising my voice, being angry, sometimes in some spaces will get me killed. So I'm going to start screaming and crying, and let's see, I can do white tears better than you. Those are tools that do not fail for me, especially in a country like this. And then legal, of course. I like suing people. But my comfort, my truth sometimes, being able to listen to people, and like I keep saying, relational connections. People are realizing where they wrongly invested, and they are fixing it in many ways as well. And I'm talking about Black women who are disabled and hidden from plain sight, because invisible disability is still a disability. And I'm seeing a lot of voices, and I'm so proud that wherever we are, we're using our voice. And that's going to echo into a larger noise than we ever believed. And just being brave to say the things, to be able to say free Congo, free Sudan, free Palestine, free the world. even on stage where I know my invoice has already been paid, I'm still saying it in those spaces and leaving. You will not silence me. That's what I see happening. People are getting fed up. People are getting fed up. And I need them to get fed up quicker. We need them to join us. What more do we need? We can't keep watching what's happening and not jaw dropping. So yeah, I see hope. And I see us returning to the original ways of relating to each other than these ways that don't benefit us. Being able to cook food for a friend who's ill, taking it to them. Even if they don't open the door, you can still place it out there. Because that's how my people show love as well. We don't care about religion. We're like, Christmas, Christians cook for Muslims, eat, vice versa. That's what I want more of. And that's what I'm seeing more by being that person as well.
I'm so just full of joy and love and elation. Like, just listening to y'all and chatting with y'all this whole time, it's just like, wow, like, y'all made me feel much better about the world, which is why, because as we said earlier, the dumpster fire is dumpster firing around the world. But y'all gave me so much like disabled Black joy this morning, which I'm gonna carry with me.
I love that, disabled Black joy.
Yes, but carry it with me all weekend into the rest of the month and the rest of the year, because I love it so much.